Gentleman from Alexandria, Mr. Levine.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I spent some time over the weekend reading this bill, and it's quite a long bill. It adds hundreds of lines of new code. And I guess I was inspired just a few moments ago by the gentleman from Caroline, Delegate Orrick, my wonderful chairman of HWI, when he said that we are not elected to be local school board members. And it's interesting because what this bill does, of course, is it says to those who like the bill will apparently not really like what their voters choose and don't really trust voters to choose their local school boards, but would say that all these decisions should be made in Richmond. And I was looking at the specifics of this bill, and I noticed that there's a lot of code that's removed. If you don't like regulations, you get to remove a lot of things in this bill. In fact, Section I, which is line 168, basically says that except for a few safety provisions, all other state statutes and regulations are removed, and all local school division policies. And then Section H gets rid of 26 pages of code. So I was thinking about my Uncle Joe. My Uncle Joe wants to have a charter school, and it would be called Uncle Joe's Charter School. And he went to his local school board, and they rejected him for reasons like he's head of the Flat Earth Society and he hears voices and all kinds of things like that. But Uncle Joe really likes this bill because as I'm looking through the code to see what this bill does, one of the things the bill does is says you don't have to emphasize reading, writing, or speaking, which is good because he doesn't like reading, writing, or speaking. You don't have to have mathematical concepts. That's good. He really doesn't like math. You don't have to include computer coding or skills and concepts of citizenship. You don't have to include knowledge of Virginia history and rural United States history. All of those regulations removed. You don't have to teach economics or government or foreign languages or international cultures or health and physical education or environmental issues or geography or music and art or practical skills. The bill goes on and on. There's a lot of things that you don't have to do with these charter schools. And one of the things that it does is it doesn't require teacher training. It actually doesn't even have class sizes, which is great because he wants to teach in a stadium. He wants to teach to 1,000 kids at once, so that's useful for him. It goes on to say that there are no standards for graduation. There's no standards for accreditation. It actually allows him to teach a whole bunch of things. Instructional materials, for example.
Mr. Speaker.
There's no requirement for those. So I would just say, if I could finish up, that...
Would the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will yield. Let me just finish my statement, then I'll be happy to yield.
Gentleman, yield.
I would say Uncle Joe likes this bill. But I do not like this bill. I believe in such old-fashioned things as reading, writing, and arithmetic. I think these 26 pages of code that have been here for decades make some sense, and I trust local school boards to make those decisions. And now I'll be happy to yield after I urge people to vote against this bill.
The gentleman from Fauquier, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the gentleman that in the new pages of code that he referred to, and he alluded to that there were no standards for charter schools, that on line 146, it says public charter schools are subject to student assessment and accountability requirements applicable to other public schools of the Commonwealth. Is that not a standard?
I would answer the gentleman that I did recognize that part of the code, but I also know that the specific trumps the general in the law. And so even though that general standard is there in line 146, the specifics, which is the 26 pages of code that I was reading a very small portion of, is exempted from that, and that's line 162 of 167 of the bill, Section H.